In the weeks following the eruption of chaos that Harlan Thorpe's midnight drilling had unleashed upon Willow Creek, the town simmered like a pot left too long on the stove, bubbling with resentment, hope, and outright lunacy that no one could have predicted in a place where the biggest excitement used to be the annual rodeo or the county fair's blue ribbon pie contest. Harlan's hidden pipeline had transformed his ranch almost overnight. Once barren fields now burst with emerald alfalfa and knee-high corn. His cattle grew sleek and fat, their bellows carrying across the valley like triumphant songs, while the rest of the community stared at their own cracked earth and wilting crops with growing envy and fury. Clara Thorpe paced the kitchen of their weathered farmhouse, her apron twisted in her hands as she watched news vans from Billings and even Helena park along the dirt road leading to their gate, reporters with perfectly coiffed hair shouting questions over the fence about the outlaw aquifer, and whether Harlan considered himself a modern-day Robin Hood or a common thief. "I told you, Harlan," she repeated for the 100th time, her voice cracking with worry as she peered through the lace curtains. "Someone saw, and now look, half the town's ready to string you up, and the other half wants to crown you king." Harlan, leaning against the doorframe with a mug of black coffee in his calloused grip, just grunted, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the horizon where the Badlands rose like jagged teeth against the sky. He wasn't one for regrets. The water was flowing, the ranch was saved, and deep down he believed that once the dust settled, folks would come around and thank him for forcing the issue that politicians and bureaucrats had ignored for decades. But the town had truly lost its mind in ways that twisted neighbor against neighbor and unearthed secrets long buried under layers of polite smiles and Sunday church handshakes. Sheriff Elias Crow found himself drowning in complaints. Old Buck Sanders, whose spread bordered Harlan's to the east, led a posse of disgruntled ranchers who patrolled the fence line at night with spotlights and rifles, convinced Harlan was siphoning not just water but their very livelihoods, while on the opposite side, younger farmers like the Hale family, Tommy's parents included, quietly diverted small trickles from Harlan's overflow ditches to keep their own herds alive, whispering gratitude even as they publicly denounced him to avoid backlash. The Dusty Boot Tavern became ground zero for the madness. Mabel Jenkins held court at her usual corner booth, her voice carrying over the clink of glasses as she spun increasingly wild tales. How Harlan had made a pact with ancient spirits in the canyons, how the water glowed faintly at night and granted unnatural vigor to anything it touched, how she'd seen Clara herself bathing in it under the moonlight and emerging 10 years younger. Patrons lapped it up, some laughing it off as whiskey talk, others nodding solemnly, and soon enough fights broke out over whether Harlan was blessed or cursed, tables overturning and fists flying until Elias had to wade in swinging his baton like a conductor gone mad. Tommy Hale, the boy whose impulsive photos had ignited the powder keg, couldn't sleep anymore. Guilt gnawed at him like a coyote on a bone as he watched his father argue with neighbors and his mother cry over the dinner table, the family fractured between loyalty to the community code and the undeniable relief of green pastures creeping back into their fields thanks to the illicit flow. He snuck out one evening, heart hammering, and rode his dirt bike toward the Thorpe ranch under a blanket of stars, determined to confess everything to Harlan and beg for a way to make it right. But halfway there he spotted headlights sweeping the Badlands, vigilantes from town, led by Buck, sabotaging the pipeline with bolt cutters and dynamite caps, their laughter echoing as they boasted about teaching that arrogant bastard a lesson. Tommy froze in the shadows, phone in hand again, but this time he hesitated, whispering to himself, "Don't, someone might see," before hitting record and capturing the whole act, sending it anonymously to Sheriff Crow in the dead of night. The next morning exploded anew. Elias arrested Buck and 3 others on charges of vandalism and terrorism threats, the jail filling up faster than during Prohibition days, and the town square turned into a battleground of protests, signs reading, "Water for all," clashing with "Sacred land, sacred law," as environmental activists chained themselves to Harlan's gate while pro-Harlan supporters brought casseroles and offers of armed protection. Federal agents arrived in black SUVs, their badges gleaming as they mapped the underground flow and tested the water, discovering not only its purity but trace elements of rare minerals that could fetch fortunes if mined responsibly, news that leaked and sent speculators circling like vultures, offering Harlan millions to sell rights he didn't legally own. Clara begged him to negotiate, to turn himself in and plead for amnesty in exchange for sharing the wealth, but Harlan dug in his heels, barricading the pump house with sandbags and standing guard with his old Winchester, declaring to the circling helicopters, "This ain't about money, it's about survival, and I'll be damned if I let suits from Washington steal what's under our feet." Romantic tensions flared amid the turmoil, old flames rekindled as stress stripped away pretenses. Elias confessed to Clara over coffee at the diner that he'd always carried a torch for her since high school, apologizing even as she gently rebuffed him. while Tommy found unexpected alliance with Harlan's niece, Lily, a fiery college student home for the summer who defended her uncle online and organized rallies, their late-night strategy sessions turning into stolen kisses under the cottonwoods. Flashbacks haunted the community. Elders recalled the 1930s Dust Bowl when similar desperation led to bloodshed over wells, warning that history repeated itself, while Mabel unearthed yellowed newspapers about native displacements in the Badlands, fueling guilt and calls for reparations that complicated every argument. Suspense built as anonymous threats arrived, tires slashed, barns burned on the outskirts, no one claiming responsibility but fingers pointing everywhere, and Harlan discovered a leak in his own camp when he caught a trusted hand selling coordinates to developers. The climax crested on a stormy August night when a massive town meeting devolved into anarchy. Hundreds packed the community hall, voices shouting over each other until gunfire rang out, Buck's supporters storming in to liberate him from custody, and chaos spilled into the streets, lightning illuminating faces twisted in rage and fear. Harlan, alerted by radio, raced into town on Rusty, arriving just as Elias took a bullet grazing his shoulder defending the jail, and in a moment of raw courage, Harlan disarmed the ringleader,